Hi, Alice here. Are you looking for that beautiful blooming plant, tough native plant, attractive to pollinators, especially native bees? Meet St. John's wort, a native perennial. It's a member of the Hyperciaceae family. May have mispronounced that a little bit. This species of St. John's wort, often called Atlantic St. John's wort, is USDA hardiness zones 7 through 10, a wide variety of zones in the eastern United States where it's considered endemic, which means it's only found growing natively in that area. A huge pollinator attractor, especially for native bees, and that is such a boon for the ecosystem that we're trying to preserve and enhance, and a big support for our farmers. So let's go check it out. What a nice border this St. John's wort makes. These are 3 plants that I put in earlier this year. They are filling out. They're known for their kind of almost needle-like foliage and their unusual, beautiful golden yellow blooms, 5 petals. This is the native variety of St. John's wort, not the variety that comes from Europe. That's considered non-native over here. Beautiful wildflower. There are 34 different species of it. In Florida, blooms from spring until fall. The successful growing of this plant is the soil requirements. It prefers sandy soil. It does adapt, however, to clayey soils and loamy soils. So if you do have heavy clay, you do want to add some compost or other soil improvement to that. I have a video I did on that. And it likes its soil well drained. The pH ranges from acidic, which you would find in sandy soils, to slightly alkaline, which would be the more clayey, loamy soils. So that's a good range that you have for growing this plant. The water requirements are moderate to get it established. It will tolerate some dry, like droughty conditions, but not prolonged drought. If you do have several weeks of no rain and a lot of sun and warm temperatures, I would recommend deep watering at least once a week. And it will tolerate some partial shade. The plants that I have growing are in full sun and they do get afternoon shade, and they've been thriving. For landscape uses, it does well as a specimen plant. It's a great low border plant, and that's what I have in my yard. And it does beautifully in mass plantings because of the unusual foliage and the periodic showy blooms, and that it is evergreen. Here is a well-established patch of St. John's wort that I planted 2 years ago, and it's reached its mature size, which is about 1.5 to 2 feet tall by the same dimensions wide. So that would be 1.5 to 2 feet wide. And it has an kind of open, sprawling habit. It blooms periodically, and the blooms are small, but it can be at various times just covered with blooms. Here is information on this variety as a border plant. You can see how it fills in this area of my pollinator garden. It's also in mass planting. This is 3 plants here. They produce a beautiful mass and fill in this area of the pollinator garden. Use it as a single specimen. Great addition to any native plant or wildflower garden. How do you get one for your yard? This plant, it's grown by native nurseries. It's available usually through native nurseries and native plant sales. Some resources are listed below for where to obtain it. It is propagated by seed. I haven't tried that. I have purchased my plants from a grower in Groveland, Florida, and that's listed below. Now, a caveat, this plant is not the European non-native plant that is frequently touted for treating depression. That St. John's wort is another species. So do not be using this plant for treating depression. You will not get those results, and there may be some unintended side effects. The plants that I have are commonly called Atlantic St. John's wort. So check out what's available in your area. Some are more upright and some are more scrubby and low to the ground. Why not try out this hardy evergreen bloomer, St. John's wort or Atlantic St. John's wort, a wonderful addition to any pollinator garden, a boon to our ecosystem because of its attraction of native bees that are so important for our farmers. If you have comments or questions, please share below. Check out the Pollinator Attracting playlist for additional blooming plants that might be perfect for your garden. Subscribe, Garden Yay, for additional highlights of pollinator blooming plants and gardening tips so you can create the garden that you love. See you again soon.